Repeat. Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting, call to order the January 28th Assembly meeting. Please join me for a flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Assembly of the City and Borough of Sitka would like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional First People of Sitka. With gratitude, we proceed on Tlingit Ani. Jess, roll call, please.
Oh, it's actually me.
Sarah, okay.
Mr. Pike,
Yes.
Ms. Carlton,
Here.
Mr. Yesad,
Here.
Mr. Christensen,
Here.
Mr. Mosier,
Here.
and Mr. Celine.
Here. Thank you. Moving on, correspondence and agenda changes. Are there any correspondence or agenda changes this evening? Seeing none, there are no ceremonial matters, so we'll move on to special reports. Under special reports, we have a number tonight. First will be Health Needs and Human Services Commission. Members Crystal Duncan and Annette Evans will present. Thank you.
Good evening, Annette Evans, Health Needs and Human Services Committee member. And
I'm Crystal Duncan, and we have Michelle
Kavoris.
sharing a mic over here. So we are three folks on the Health Needs and Human Services Commission. And so we're going to do a quick presentation of the two goals that we had.
Health Needs and Human Services Commission prioritized report on childcare as one of our 2024 goals. Firstly, Health Needs and Human Services would like to thank the City and Borough of Sitka's Assembly for requesting our commission research and to make recommendations on this issue. We are excited to see the future action that you will take on this issue and hope to continue to be a support as you move forward. Further, the Health Needs and Human Services Subcommittee on Child Care Services would like to recognize the response from individuals and groups in our community to support the gathering of information for this report. A special thank you to SICA's Early Childhood Coalition, Southeast Association for the Education of Young Children and Executive Director Blue Scheibler, SICA Tribe of Alaska, SICA Counseling, Joel Marcus, Betty Eliason Child Care Center Board President and Parent, all local child care providers and their governing boards, Parks and Recreation, Stephanie Berglund, CEO of Thread Alaska, Rachel Roy of SICA Chamber of Commerce, CBS Strategic Work Group, CBS staff Melissa Wildman and Melissa Haley for your policy and procedure guidance, and other volunteers who are helping to address this issue for SICA, including Carrie Sagal and Lauren Wild of the Early Childhood Coalition. SICA's working parents are struggling to maintain their jobs or attain a job due to lack of available childcare. Families with children enrolled in childcare struggle to balance their mortgage and food on the table with the steep childcare costs. Our local businesses struggle to keep their doors open without a reliable workforce. With all these challenges, our community stands on a demographic cliff with an aging population, lower school enrollment, fewer births, and a housing situation that makes in-migration challenging. Now more than ever before, it is important for our municipal governments to act in supporting their communities. As Assembly members, you have an opportunity to take meaningful action now in supporting the development of a community-wide strategy that will improve access to childcare, affordability of childcare, and strengthen the childcare workforce, and in turn will strengthen SICA's economy and support a stabilized community demographic. The pandemic did not cause the childcare crisis, but it stressed the business model even more and has brought the childcare crisis to the immediate forefront. The past 2 years, and for the first time in history, Alaska made positive legislative action focused on childcare. Yet despite this action, childcare program business models continue to unravel into the red, and without a sustainable source of revenue beyond tuition, childcare businesses will fail. In this report, we identified 3 major problems. SICA is lacking available affordable childcare spots to meet the needs of our current population. 2, this crisis is affecting our local economy. And 3, this crisis is changing the demographics of SICA. This report shares the current service level and partnering opportunities in SICA, highlights of relevant action taking place in other Alaska cities and boroughs, outline effective examples of community collaboration and strategies improving access to sustainable and affordable childcare programs. These are summarized on the slide. After sifting through several actionable recommendations, 7 recommendations have been listed in order of priority with most impactful action first. Recommendations for action include: 1, CBS fund existing childcare and early education programs. An alcohol tax ordinance is recommended as a source of revenue, and developing a working relationship MOA with AUIC to safely distribute and safeguard these funds. 2, CBS subsidized, discount, or offer free utilities for all licensed childcare centers. 3, CBS identifies any school or city-owned facility or supports the attainment of a facility wherein development of a community-supported childcare center can begin. 4, CBS investigate incentives for businesses to support their employees with the cost of childcare. 5, CBS continue to list childcare as a high priority on the annual CBS legislative priorities list. 6, CBS continues to act in supporting strategic plan action item 1.4. And our final recommendation, and possibly the most important, CBS Assembly, Health Needs and Human Services Commission, relevant CBS staff, and stakeholders sit down for a work session in February. Lack of childcare availability is a problem, however, is one that our federal government has been unable to address. Therefore, solutions for community childcare issues need to start at the community level with municipal involvement that is aimed to address childcare as part of its long-term infrastructure. Your adoption for the recommendations herein will address CBS Strategic Plan Action Item 1.4 to improve and preserve the quality of life and affordability for all Sitkans. Thank you. assembly members, as our mayor and our administrator are not present, but thank them as well for your dedication to serving the community of Sitka by volunteering your time and sharing your knowledge and individual expertise in collaboration for progressive action in support of early childhood education, nurturing the strength in our community.
So we have two goals that we're going to discuss. So we're just going to transition to stay on time, basically. But first, I have to acknowledge that Annette's the reason that you have this report with these recommendations finally before you as the assembly. You may remember in 2022, you guys requested this of us, and she is basically the person who spearheaded it. She did it in consultation with the experts in our community, as well as resources outside of it. So you have a well fleshed out document, and I just want to thank you. You are the reason this got done, and you can see her hard work written all over throughout the pages of the first report. So we're going to go ahead and switch gears from the youngest in our community to the eldest in our community. Now, two of the three goals that we had, we are presenting on them tonight, and we didn't realize how interlinked they were. But we do know that in a healthy community, we would take care of the full spectrum, so all ages, and we just happen to be speaking of our youngest and our eldest tonight. I chose a quote from an Alaska Native leader to start us off because it supports the reverence that my community has for our young and our old. And our working group, we started off with 3 members. I just want to thank Dr. Paul Bana for his contributions. He's no longer on the commission, but he was 6 months alongside of us. And then I'd like to thank Michelle, who's sitting beside me. She actually came aboard after we had adopted these goals. So she joined us midway through, and she's been helpful in taking us to the fruition of this at the end of a short 6 months. So similar to the previous presentation, we wanted to start with gratitude and acknowledgement. So in the report, we combined on this slide, both the introduction, but also the partnering opportunities that we listed out. Again, those are across the 2 sections because there was so much overlap. So we are a town that we know are supported by our nonprofits. And as we are going through this, we reached out to many of those stakeholders who we deem as those experts who can educate us so that we could pass that along to you. So just want to extend gratitude and gumshish to those entities and acknowledge that up on the screen, you can see that they are in the business of providing elder services within our community, and we benefit greatly because of that. We identified from your guys' strategic plan, this isn't outlined as childcare is. So we had to get creative. We had to go to the strategic plan and say, well, which would this support if we took action? So we settled on goal 1 and goal 2. You read all about it. We went ahead and we listed it there. And then down at the bottom, this was the section that kind of identified why this community group can sometimes be seen as more vulnerable within the community. So things like limited income, we kind of outlined and addressed those in the report in depth, but I wanted to include some space here as well. Like with childcare, we thought it's going to be helpful if we bring you up to speed on what other communities are doing with respect to the elders in their community. So we outlined 4 of them. We reached out to them to figure out, okay, how do you tackle this? How do you support your elders? And so up on the screen, again, we gave you a short overview of kind of the big differentiators between those communities and Sitka. And I guess our hopes was that if you see something that you think is piques your interest, and you're concerned about this, you can reach out for more information. So we tried to give you a nice summary so you can see what some other communities are doing. And as you move forward, these communities will be there to support you like they did when they provided us information. We came up with 6 recommendations. The first one is kind of that throwaway risk management. You guys always have the option to do nothing. Just leave it as it is. And of course, in the section, we outlined what you guys currently do to support elders in the community. So you could, as your first option, do nothing and just maintain the current level of service. And then we, again, because it's not outlined like childcare in the strategic plan, we said, okay, you could do recommendation 2, 3, 4, and here's which strategic goal, whether it was one or both of them, that this would support and uphold. So that's kind of how we outlined the recommendations for you. Recommendation number 6, just want to circle to that one and let you know that 1, we know it wasn't a part of the strategic plan. 2, we know that there are people who are more aware of the topic. They're those experts, which is not us. We like to consider ourselves experts, but we think they are the source that can tell you. For example, you see that we didn't recommend a commission or a task force like they have in Juneau. That doesn't mean that we're against it. We actually think those are the people who should let you know if that's the direction that the city needs to go. So the sustainability means don't forget about this. The health needs, we're going to move on. You know our process. We adopt new goals every year. And so while we might not have elders at the forefront, and who knows, maybe we're going to come together and say, we're just not done with this topic. We want you guys to keep it on your radar. So that's kind of that catch-all of we're not done, we're just starting. We wanted to provide you with information, and we support basically the last recommendation in the childcare report, which is if you guys are open to a work session, we will show up with as much information and discuss to answer any questions or go into further detail. We gave you approximately 20-page each. That's a lot to add to your packet. But we know you still have questions based off of that. And we also think that's an important thing. You can see that there are stakeholders in our room. There are a lot of people who know about these topics. There are a lot of people who are passionate about it. So we spent the time. We know that a 15-minute presentation isn't going to get it done either. So that is our next request, is if you would feel that that would serve the assembly, we are certainly as a commission willing to do that. So just wanted to extend gratitude again for allowing us as a commission to adopt these goals. You guys were aware in June that we were going to move this direction, and we did it in 6 short months. So appreciate what we were able to learn, and we hope you found some useful information. So we have about 3 minutes. Do you guys have any questions that you wanted to send our direction? Again, Michelle is here. I'm going to stop hogging the microphone, but going to Cheesh for inviting us today.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to thank you. It's obvious you guys put a lot of work into this, and I appreciate it. We'll be continuing to read it over. I read it over, but you know, it's a lot to take in. Thank you for your hard work.
As liaison to this group, I can attest it's been a big effort in 6 months. And there are struggles, meeting quorum and all of that. And your guys's, quick work meant that there is, a lot of information and resources out there. So you could find them, and bringing that all together in this presentation. I appreciate you much. And I think that suggestion of a work session is a good one. I hope we take that on.
Thank you very much.
Just one final thing. So February, Michelle, she is our new chair. We're going to have a work session to establish goals. Again, we kind of cut ourselves a short time frame, not actually getting those goals before you until June. Our goal is to bring that forward at a March meeting or even end of February. With that said, if this was helpful, please let us know if we need to tweak this. We want to serve the assembly. We want to feel impactful and effective. And so this was one means to do that. If this worked for you, great. If you have feedback, please pass that along to Jess or to Sarah so they could get that to us, because that's really going to help us as we plan for this new year as well. So thank you again.
Thank you again. School board. Mr. Burdick.
Thank you, Mr. Pike. Phil Burdick, School Board President. Update of the month and what's been happening with us. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the productive and positive meeting last month. We greatly appreciate your support in funding to the CAP. House Bill 69 has been introduced in the legislature by Representative Himschoot. And in it, she asks to put $1,000 into the base student allocation, as well as adding $404 in the next 2 years to help with that inflation proofing. I say help with because we actually need 1808 this year to catch up to inflation. But this bill will go a long way. And in regards to that, we'll be disseminating advocacy information in the next couple of days. Superintendent Jensen is working on that right now, including legislators to contact and and how to contact them, as well as some talking points for people. We'll have them for all parents in the next couple of days, so we'll be sending that out. And then speaking of advocacy, public testimony will be taken at 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. tomorrow for House Bill 69 for the House Education, and then again at 8 a.m. on Friday. Senate Education will be taking testimony tomorrow and Friday at 3:30 p.m. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 chances for you to for you all to have your voices heard about how we can support our schools. We've met with every school so far to engage and inform parents about the current budget process. You know, we had talked about being able to, we talked about switching our process a little bit so that we could get some more input as well as disseminate more information. So we've met with every school. Sitka High School is meeting as we speak. Pacific High School is meeting on February 4th. And then also, we have our first public budget hearing, and that's Thursday night, 6 p.m. at the Sitka High School Library. So for those of you who maybe don't have kids in the school or you missed your school's meeting, there will be an opportunity for you to come. We're going to shift the presentation will be mostly the same, but we're going to shift the questions and ask for input from everyone. So again, that's Thursday night at 6 at Sitka High School in the library. And at next week's board meeting, we're going to take a look at a draft resolution. Hopefully we can pass that and then send it on to you for your support. Thank you, Ms. Carlson, for the nudge of ways that the assembly could be a support to us. So we've been working on that as well. And that'll be up at our next board meeting. And so it's a whole lot of money, whole lot of advocacy. Please contact either Dr. Jensen or myself or any school board member to see how you can support those advocacy efforts. In closing, I would like to give an appreciation to Parks and Rec for hosting after-school activities for kids. My 8th grader came home and had a great time in her after-school activity. And so I really just want to appreciate, again, the way that the city has stepped up to support young people, support families all the way. So thank you so much.
I have a question for you, Phil, if that's okay. So when the news about Rebecca's bill came out, I thought, cool. But would it make sense to try and get a resolution through the assembly supporting it? The earliest we could possibly do it would be the next meeting. Okay? This came out, I just found out about it a few days ago. Or is it better, we're better doing other things?
I think everything is better. A little bit of everything is always good. I think when I've been talking to community members and parents, and Mr. Estad was at the Blatchley budget hearing, I think the most impactful thing we can do is talk about how you are impacted. What's happened with your kids and your teachers. They hear from school boards, they hear from assemblies, they know that communities or cities are struggling to keep up with the lack of funding around the state. So they know that from you as a board. What they don't know is what happened to your kiddos and what happened to their class sizes and what happened to their activities and what happened to their electives. And those are the stories that really resonate. I listened to testimony. It was planned testimony. I don't know what morning it was. I think when the bill first came out. And some of the stories that people are telling about the Cuspec region and the buildings and what people are having to deal with all around the state, it really makes a difference. So I think that would be the most impactful thing that anyone in the community can do. And I know that sitting in front of a board or as testifying to the legislature is nobody's cup of tea. I don't even like doing it, and I don't get paid for it, but I get appreciated for it. And so we want to really support parents in doing that because it's really important that that your voice is heard. So I would say both and, Mr. Christensen.
Thank you. Sitka Tribe of Alaska.
Good evening. I have, to start with, provided the clerk with a copy of the tribe's annual report for each of you. Please feel free to review that as you are able, since it provides a lot of information about the state of the tribe. As far as our government-to-government report, we did have a meeting with Representative Himshoot, and that was on January 7th. And the different topics that were covered included protecting the herring, Area M bycatch, K through 12 education funding, as well as funding flexibility, funding for the Alaska Marine Highway, as well as a bear population study, and funding the Ocean Rangers program. She also discussed some of her priorities with us, such as working more collaboratively with tribes in Alaska, and also looking to make September 30th observed in the state officially as Every Child Matters Day or Orange Shirt Day. On the 10th of January, we had our annual Tribal Council retreat in which we met with all of our officers, the chief executive, operating, financial, and legal officers. And we engaged in just some training in which we went through all of our governing documents to make sure that we were all starting with a common understanding of what our marching orders are. We went through aspects of our constitution as well as parts of our strategic plan. We determined our travel plans and our budget, and also looked at what our different committee assignments are, both internally, semi-internally, as well as to the different commissions that we have seats on as well. And I, per tradition, will be the liaison to all of you. And then we also had elected our officers. So in my absence, our vice chair, Elena Peterson, would be sitting here in my place. In big news, on January 13th in Washington, D.C., on behalf of the tribe, I signed a transportation compact with the U.S. Department of Transportation. And the purpose of the STA U.S. Department of Transportation Self-Governance Compact and Funding Agreement, in addition to just what the very long title indicates of self-government or self-governance, what that really means is a streamlined receipt of funding, management, and reporting of programs to the various administrations within DOT, such as the Federal Highway Administration and the Federal Transit Administration. We had a work session on January 15th with BHA in which we received some updates on housing projects and also followed up on the 2023 Bear Task Force discussion on how best to reduce conflict between bears and people. It probably took about the same fraction of time as it did in our joint government-to-government meeting. For our January 15th regular council meeting, we took different actions, including approving our comments to the Board of Fish on proposals concerning king salmon, subsistence salmon, and herring, as well as approving our representative to the search board and delegates for the National Congress of American Indians convention that is happening.
We tabled a recommendation to form an ad hoc committee identifying the impacts of tourism on cultural and natural resources in order to find ways to try to balance those concerns as well as the impacts that any kind of reduction would have on our economic development. So we will be addressing that again in February. Are there any questions? Okay, with that, Ganesh Chish.
Thank you very much. We are now at persons to be heard for public participation on any item off of this agenda, not to exceed 3 minutes per individual. Is there any public comment for items off the agenda? If so, please come forward and state your first and last name for the record.
Good. My name is Margaret Glennon, and I'm actually a retired teacher from the school district, but I came here to give you thanks and appreciation for your participation in a summit that was a year ago for the Early Childhood Coalition. It led to the opening of career pathways for students at our high schools in Sitka to obtain classes dual credit through the University of Alaska Anchorage, as well as through our high schools. There were 14 students at Sitka High in the fall, 3 at Pacific High, and another 16 at Mount Edgecombe High School. 2 of my students from Sitka High now have internships in early childhood settings. I currently have 9 students this term in course offerings, doing observations around town and gaining firsthand experience. So all of this positively affects the local knowledge base as well as the career opportunities for those students who choose to continue. There'll be 6 credits Head Start towards university if they choose to continue, and if not, these are our Sitka kids and future parents. So thanks for your participation in that.
Good evening. My name is Joel Marcus, and I am the board president of Betty Eliason Child Care Center. And tonight I'm here to just urge your support for childcare in this community. Childcare is in a crisis situation across the country, but specifically in Sitka. And so, you know, you saw a great report today. You guys have got some great information in front of you. I'd like to urge action on that, but I think from my perspective, I'd just like to tell you a little bit about what it's like to operate a childcare center in this community. Essentially, what we're doing is we're operating a public service in the private sector. You know, it is really difficult for us to charge a tuition that fully pays for the services that we provide to families. We've struggled, like many businesses in this community, to recruit and retain staff. And those struggles have really prevented us from meeting the enrollment goals that we have. We're the largest childcare center in Sitka. We were founded in 1982. We're licensed for some 99 students. We have less than half of that in enrollment right now. And like many childcare centers across the country, essentially we over the course of the pandemic and thereafter, because of the fixed operating costs that we have, our center has to come up with about $10,000 a month just in operating costs, things like utilities, insurance, repairs and maintenance. Because of that and the challenges in meeting our enrollment targets, we've been operating in the red for a long time now. We are buoyed by COVID relief money and grant funding that we get, but that model is not sustainable. And so you guys have received a very well-written and thought-out report. And I urge your action on that report. The thing that childcare centers in this community need is financial support. That's the big goal. It's the hard one to swallow for people in your position, but it's really what childcare centers need to be able to continue to operate and not push those costs onto parents, creating essentially a pay-to-play situation where it's kind of the, where equity is not necessarily distributed across our community and who receives childcare. So thank you for the effort that you guys have put in this thus far. I think you've developed a great group of people working on this in both the Health Needs and Human Services and the Early Childhood Coalition, and I urge your support. So thank you.
Hello, my name is Annika Krapczyk. I'm a member of the Sitka Cycling Club, and I was here to talk about the legislative priorities that the Assembly is working on today. I just wanted to impress upon the Assembly that
That is gonna come up later.
later, okay.
Yeah, thanks.
All right.
Anyone else for items off the agenda? Seeing none, we're now at the consent agenda consisting of items A, B, and C. May I have a motion, please?
I move to approve consent agenda consisting of item A, approve the December 17, 30, and January 9th Assembly meeting minutes. Item B, approve a liquor license renewal application for the House of Liquors, Inc., DBA Salty Sales Liquor Cabinet at 321 Lincoln Street, number B. And C, making supplemental appropriations for fiscal year 2025, first reading, mid-year supplemental appropriations.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve at all of these consent agenda items. Is there any public comment? Assembly deliberation.
Right, on the motion to approve the consent agenda consisting of items A, B, and C, Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Mr. Yestad,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Mr. Celine,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Mr. Pike,
Yes,
and the motion passes 6-0.
thank you. We are now on item D. May I have a motion, please?
I move to approve Elena Peterson to an unexpired term on the Tourism Commission. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to appoint Elena Peterson to an expired term on the Tourism Commission. Is there any public comment on this motion? Assembly deliberation. I'd like to thank Elena for putting her name in the hat. Sarah, please call the roll.
All right, on the motion to appoint Elena to an unexpired term on the Tourism Commission, Mr. Yestad,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Mr. Pike,
Yes,
Mr. Christensen.
Yes.
And Mr. Celine.
Yes.
The motion passes 6-0 on item D.
thank you. We are now at item E, submitting the City and Borough of Sitka's FY 2026 legislative priorities, the state of Alaska and the 2025 legislature. This item was postponed at our last meeting so that we could hear from Assemblymember Carlson on the proposed amendments after she had returned. Before we hear from her, may I have a motion, please?
I move to approve Resolution 2025-03 on first and final reading, submitting City and Borough of Sitka FY 26 legislative priorities to the State of Alaska and 2025 legislature.
Second.
So moved and seconded to approve our legislative priorities. Is there any public comment? Welcome back.
My name is Annika. I am a member of the Sitka Cycling Club, and I just wanted to press upon the Assembly the importance of a bike and pedestrian path on HPR. I know that infrastructure is one of the legislative priorities, but specifically having a bike and pedestrian path on HPR would, I think, drastically improve life in Sitka. I live out on Sawmill Creek and I love having the bike path over there. And I really don't bike over on HPR for fear of being hit by a car, and particularly in the summertime, being hit by one of those cruise ship buses. I think, yeah, that it would really improve any traffic problems over on HPR, especially in the summertime, and alleviate some of the stress that the cruise ships are placing on our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on this motion?
Ben Huey, Sitka Trailworks. I just wanted to reiterate some of what Annika just said. In our trail plan survey a couple years ago, we got over 800 people to respond. We heard that improvements to safety on Halibut Point Road were the #1 priority as regards to walking and biking in Sitka. And with what we know about bus traffic on that street, I do think that we could see another fatality on that street, and we shouldn't let it get there. This will be a decade-long process to go through pre-development and design, and starting to get that on state legislators' priority list would be great. Thank you.
Any other public comment? All right, bringing it back to the assembly. JJ.
Thank you. I move to amend the unfunded mandates portion of our legislative priorities with the items 4 and 5 out of the 6 on that page. There's no large substantive changes. It's kind of mostly just wording. A few little tweaks are, what was mentioned as future.
Let's get a second first.
Yeah, so I move to amend items 4 and 5 in the unfunded mandates as written in the packet.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to amend the motion, amend our legislative priorities. And sorry, what section was that again? Unfunded mandates. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, assembly deliberation, and I think this would be when it's your turn, JJ.
Yes, thank you. Both of these are in regards to our schools. Language updates, nothing really more. The number 4 talks about continuing to the state to reimburse school bond debt and support new bonding opportunities. And the 5th one, just stable and predictable funding for school systems. The exact wording is in the packet. Thank you.
I don't see anything wrong with the changes. It flows a little nicer, the verbiage. So I'm in favor of it.
Everyone done reading?
No, I'm just looking at that. I
Yeah.
wasn't there last time, so I'm
Right.
trying to catch up.
The one thing that does change in item 4, as previously written, it says there was future required school maintenance, and we've learned in the last month, since this was drafted in December, and we now see it now, we've seen that there's about $30 million of maintenance needs for the school that is currently scoped. So I wanted to change that word from future to current.
Yeah, I'm fine with the edits, so, yeah, I support it.
All right, Sarah, on the amendment.
So the amendment is to proposes some rewording for the verbiage in sections 4 and 5 of the unfunded mandates. Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Mr. Yestad,
Yes.
Mr. Celine,
Yes.
Mr. Mosier,
Yes.
Mr. Pike,
Yes.
and Mr. Christensen.
Yes.
Okay, the amendment passes 6-0. And so then you have the main motion as amended on the floor.
Back on the main motion. Any further assembly deliberation? Core?
Well, like I said, I wasn't here last time. I've seen a lot of these come and go. It's nice, but unfortunately, I don't think that we're gonna see much difference, at least from what they were planning would do anyway. But I think it is important to continue to put these in because it seems like we have to have something in there at least 5 or 6 years before we have any chance of it happening. But people change, situations change, and it's good to have it on record.
Ms. Carlson?
I appreciate from Yeti Kuka's government reports that we have that ferry system request in commonality with the tribe. And I also like to see, hear, and thank the staff for drafting it this way, to be listening to our community in such regard, to kind of spell out that childcare and that housing and support for nonprofits. In page 2 of this, those are, specifically the needs of our community for, having that quality of life that we need here. The rest of it on these legislative priority lists are, more municipal projects. I wanted to bring special note there, Melissa, to your kind of understanding of our community needs for quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah?
All right, on the motion to approve resolution 2025-03 on first and final reading as amended, Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Mr. Celine,
Yes.
Mr. Pike,
Yes.
Mr. Yestad,
Yes.
and Mr. Mosier.
Yes.
The motion passes 6-0 on first and final reading.
Thank you. I think the next few might take a few minutes, so we're going to take our break a little bit early. So we're going to take a 5 to 8 minute break, please. Please be seated when you're ready. All right, I think we're all seated. We'll get back to business. All right, we are now on item F. May I have a motion, please?
I move to approve ordinance 2025-02 on second and final reading, amending Title 14, Streets, Sidewalks, and Public Spaces of the Sitka General Code by amending Chapter 14.10, Commercial Recreational Use of Municipal Lands and Facilities.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt ordinance 25-02, amending Title 14, Street Sidewalks and Public Places. Is there any public comment?
Bethany Lawrence, High Output Tours. Hi again. Assembly members, thank you for the opportunity to address ordinance 2025-02. As a local business owner who employs 40 hardworking Sitkans and depends on access to municipal lands, I fully support the city's efforts to manage these resources responsibly. I also want to thank the Assembly for clarifying the handling of rare cases and emergencies at the previous meeting. It's reassuring to know that flexibility exists in truly urgent situations. However, there are still practical concerns with the ordinance that could unintentionally hinder businesses like mine. And I ask for a few key adjustments to ensure it's both effective and workable for all stakeholders. First, I ask the Assembly to consider changing the ordinance's implementation to October 1st rather than November 1st. The 60-day permit process means that applications submitted on November 1st won't result in permits being issued until January at the earliest. This creates unnecessary challenges for businesses aiming to start operations at the beginning of the year. Moving the effective date to October 1st will account for delays caused by the holiday season, ensuring businesses can secure permits by January 1st, allowing for proper planning, hiring, and preparation. This simple adjustment provides flexibility for both operators and city staff while supporting businesses transitioning to year-round operations. Second, I would like to address the redundancy of the employee identification requirements outlined in the ordinance. City plans to issue badges for employees, but as a business with 40 seasonal employees, this creates an unnecessary financial and administrative burden for both the city and businesses. My employees already wear branded uniforms, which make them highly visible and easy to identify. Additionally, permit holders are public knowledge and listed by the city, making further identification requirements redundant. I urge the Assembly to reconsider this provision and instead rely on existing uniforms or company-issued IDs, which achieve the same goal without wasting resources or complicating compliance. Sitka's tourism industry is built on collaboration, respect, and professionalism. As the city works to implement this ordinance, I respectfully ask the Assembly to ensure that policies promote efficiency and mutual support rather than adding unnecessary burdens to businesses and municipal staff. Thank you for your time and consideration, and thank you.
Hi, longtime Sitkan. My name is Andrew Scorzelli. We're talking about roads and putting resources into that, and it's not what I came here for, but it occurs to me the no pedestrian zone on Catlean Road, if you guys are aware of that. But there is an important section of Catlean Road that's cut off to pedestrian use, and pedestrians walk in the street.
I hate to interrupt you, but that's not really part of this particular motion.
Okay.
We're talking about commercial use of the city property.
Okay, well, I hope you guys are all considering that because it's a danger to
There is an
pedestrians.
opportunity for public comment at the end too, so.
Okay, awesome.
Thanks. Anyone else on this motion?
Hello again, Ben Huey, Sitka Trail Works. I just want to thank city staff and the Assembly for all their work on this. I've been sitting on the Parks and Rec Committee for the last 4 or so years and have seen how the current process does not work well. A volunteer commission meeting once a month isn't a good process, especially with the lack of cumulative data that we receive about the effects. And I yeah, I just urge the assembly to seek that balance, that we will have to be really adaptive about this. The correct numbers will be tough to achieve, and I think that this code allows the flexibility. Without putting these numbers into code, we have this plan. It's possible that we start at one point and make sure that we're not undercutting any businesses, and then over the years, we adjust slowly so that we can find the right balance. We've definitely heard about overcrowding at Baranoff Warm Spring a lot, and you probably heard that as well. I do believe we can really successfully coexist between commercial outfits and recreational use of our trails, especially given the scheduling of many of those activities. But yeah, there's a lot of public input in this, and the city staff worked really hard, and I'm looking forward to some reforms. Thank you.
Anyone else? Public comment on this motion? Sarah? I believe we have a phone.
Yep, we do.
Hello.
Hi, Valerie. It's Sarah calling from the Assembly meeting. We are on item F. If you could please state your first and last name for the record, and then your 3 minutes will begin.
My first name is Valerie, last name is Nelson. I'm a lifelong resident of Sitka, former mayor, former assembly member. I'm calling in opposition to this ordinance, and the main reason being is that I believe you're trying to restrict access to our public lands. When I was a young girl going to what used to be called Baranoff Elementary School, we had a song that was called "This Land is Your Land, This Land is My Land," that many people my age are familiar with, and maybe not many of you. But when you're increasing costs for people to get to these public places, I just think that it's totally wrong. I now have no access to it, so I'm going to have to pay one of these guides or get her there people, and I just totally think what's going on is wrong. I've looked at the meeting minutes and stuff for Parks and Rec, and I find it that it's kind of suspect that this happens in the shoulder season when a lot of people that have worked really hard in the summer are now out of town and aren't aware of what's going on. And I also disagree with our Parks and Recs director, Mr. Knox's testimony at several of your meetings. Believe me, I've watched them from December, that I'm not really a stakeholder because I wasn't there. I didn't testify. I wasn't asked for input. And a majority of my people that I talk with and in my social circles were not asked what we thought. I do use and appreciate our trail system, many of which were subsidized through federal grants and donations. And I just think what's going on is wrong. You guys are trying to rush it through under the guise of, oh, well, the people at Baranoff Warm Springs really need us to do something. Well, fine. Let's deal with Baranoff Warm Springs and let's do this right. Let's calm down. Let's step back. And, kudos to Bethany Lawrence for her letters to the editor and whatnot. I really, truly think a lot of people don't know what's going on. I've been traveling for medical now for about a month and a half because I can't get the care in Sitka because we now just have one facility. And I just found out about this through my newspaper subscription. So please take a pause and think about people that don't have access to Baranoff or Goddard or whatever. I haven't been to Goddard in years. I did help build the tubs 50 years ago from the ground up with people that were affiliated with the Moose Club. And I also helped on the construction of the Tom Young cabin. Tom Young was my brother-in-law, and that was total volunteer work, and the city benefits from that. So please take a step back and think about other people that don't have the access that you guys do. Thank you.
Okay. Assembly deliberation.
Hi, Tim. thank everyone for the public comments. Appreciate it. I feel that at this point, we've kind of hashed this out. The parks, or I'm sorry, Amy and Kevin have made it abundantly clear that they have done a lot of public input and outreach. I was the liaison. I have seen it and witnessed it. There has been nothing but openness about this. They've used a lot of data to come up with this and best estimates based on that data of the numbers and the plan that we're doing here. I think as one person said, that is a balance, and I agree, it's a balance that we try to achieve between what the community enjoying these things and then the commercial aspect of it. Currently, right now, the board, the Parks and Rec board, doesn't really have any realistic way to disapprove something if they start feeling that these things are getting overwhelmed. So, and finally, there will be opportunities to be flexible, as Amy pointed out, and we'll be able to adjust this as time goes on, as we get this process going, get more data. We can work it out and adjust as necessary. I do agree that the ID tags could be, some people won't like that, but there's lots of places and in different areas where there is tourism that have ID tags. I think we can find something that will work for people. And to clarify, those who might be listening, because a commenter said that locals would have to pay. That's unfortunately, that's incorrect. This is for commercial activity only. Current residents will not have to apply for a permit or anything like that to get access to our community and outdoors. And we'll have full access to that, and that continues. Thank you.
Yeah, I had to admit that when we were up here, the line from the treasurer of the Sierra Madre came into my head. I don't need no stinking badges. But I guess I have a question. It's more maybe for Rachel. If we change the start date to October 1st, is that a major change?
I think it probably is.
You sure?
I would concur with our attorney.
I mean,
yes.
I
It would
prefer
be
if it
an
wasn't, but I
additional
think it
meeting.
is. Yeah.
All right. And then I guess and obviously badges would be as well if we, but I guess I don't see a problem with changing it to October 1st, if that really would make a difference, other than the fact we had to push it off to another meeting. But maybe Amy might, or Kevin might have a different take on that. Is that a big issue?
Yeah, can you guys come up?
Yeah, thank you. Amy Ainsley, Planning and Community Development Director, and Kevin Knox, Parks and Rec Coordinator, is also joining me up here. On the effective date, we did kind of play with what the right effective date was so that it didn't sort of confuse folks going into the 2025 season and then preparing for the 2026 season. The rationale behind setting November 1st is that, again, this activity generally centers around the visitor industry, and there is still visitor activity happening in October. And even while it's sort of tailing off, folks are also finishing their year-end reports and kind of finalizing their numbers in October. And so we felt that we would have better information from the previous season to incorporate in the upcoming season by putting the effective date in November rather than October.
Is there any chance that the application could be ready earlier so that they could get started before November 1st?
I suppose that's possible. The trick with that, though, is the land use plan would have to be adopted so that we had a fee structure to have within the application and other things like that. And Amy's right that having enough time between the end of the majority of the cruise season or the visitor season and some time to develop or make adjustments to the use plan and then bring it before the body so that it can be adopted and then incorporated into applications and planning and other things like that for the operators. October might be a little bit early, but it's probably doable. I would like to point out that the current application process has been open. It's always open, and at this point, we've only gotten 5 applications so far.
Most of our applications come in January, February, and March, so.
Yeah.
So if I can speak on that, or if you're concerned, that my thought would be we pass this tonight because we've already postponed, and then if you feel or someone feels about changing that, you could talk to them and then maybe do something to change an ordinance later.
It's just exploring the possibility.
Chris. One quick question for you two. I think I might be getting this mixed up with the land use plan. This is for permitting. Is there limited entry on these permits, or is it pretty much as many people as apply can get a permit?
Sure. So that is entirely driven by the use plan.
Okay.
So the code change that is in the ordinance, which is before you tonight, does not specify any limits about, even, certain areas or, whether that be the number of permits or the number of groups per day or number of visitors that use any particular assets. None of that lives in the code. The code enables us to have a use plan that would define those things or not. And that is the piece that is able to be flexible and receive public input and input from the Parks and Rec Committee and the Assembly as often and as frequently as you would like to, because we didn't want to, again, hard code any of those numbers or limits in the general code that can be difficult to kind of keep flexible and adaptive to needs over time. So no, none of what you are passing tonight necessarily creates like a limited entry or a limited number of permits.
Okay, that's how I thought it was. I just wanted to confirm that. So thank you.
Mr. Saleen.
Me too, Chris. And what we're signing is so staff is gonna write the stuff, not the committee.
Are you, sorry, are you speaking about the use plan?
I'm
itself
talking
or the-
about this thing right now, that if we pass this passes the responsibility to make the weasel words to you guys, not the committee. And it's not on deciding 40 people a week at Goddard or anything like that. This is just a change from the committee calling the shots to come before the assembly. That's going to staff, no longer the people on the Parks and Rec Committee.
So to clarify, the individual permits, right now, when people apply for a permit, that individual permit has to go to the Parks and Rec Committee for a recommendation and then get signed off by the administrator. So under this new code, yes, staff would administer those permits instead of having individual hearings for each permit. However, this ordinance also requires that staff only issue permits in accordance with the use plan that is recommended for approval by the committee and adopted by the assembly. So the assembly will still give staff the marching orders about how many people and where and when, and we will just administer the permits under that basis. So we will not have, as staff, the ability to decide how many permits go out and for what areas. That will still be driven by the public process.
So the public process says 40 people a week at Goddard.
If that's what the assembly approves in the
So
plan.
we still have a chance to not approve that. What we're approving tonight is that you guys are gonna write it, not the committee.
In a manner of speaking,
Where I'm going with this is
Yeah.
we found out last month that the Forest Service, without any public process in 2018, announced that Shoals Point and Fort Babcock is a high volume tourist area, and they're gonna issue 1 permit for 75 people a day. So it's not gonna be 11 permits that'll handle a 6-pack license from somebody in town that's trying to have a family business. That's already set up to be like, get a landing craft full of Love Boat people to bust in on the beach. And this is why my hackles are up. So
Sure.
I'm trying to focus in on it. So
yeah,
thank you
absolutely.
very
So,
much.
yeah, and to clarify, like, in the case of that example, staff would not be empowered for us to unilaterally say no more permits for Goddard or all permits for Goddard. That decision would still rest with the assembly.
Roger. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for all your work on this. I think, are there any further questions for Amy and Kevin? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think, while there are some general concerns about perhaps some of the pieces of this, I think there are opportunities for us to, I don't know, it's one of those things where you don't know all the issues you're going to run into until you run it a little bit and see kind of what happens. And so And since, I mean, we are basically working within a framework that was new to us, I think we're going to find more than just what we've heard tonight is probably going to be in need of a little bit of adjustment. So I'm at this point comfortable in moving forward with the plan as it is and seeing kind of what we hear and what we find out. And I'm looking forward to I think the real nuts and bolts is going to be in a land use plan. And that's where we're really going to find out where we're at on this one. So, I think we still have a few more steps, but I think this is a good first one. Let's run it and see how it goes. Sarah, roll call, please.
All right, on the motion to approve ordinance 2025-02 on second and final reading, Mr. Pike,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Mr. Celine,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
and Mr. Yestad.
Yes.
The motion passes 6-0 on item F.
Thank you. Item G, please.
I move to approve ordinance 2025-01 on second and final reading, making supplemental appropriations for fiscal year 2025, the special election.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt ordinance 2501, making supplemental appropriations for fiscal year 2025 special election. Is there any public comment? Assembly deliberation. I think we've hashed this one out a little bit. Sarah.
All right, on the motion to approve ordinance 2025-01 on second and final reading, Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Mr. Celine,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Mr. Yestad,
Yes.
Mr. Pike,
Yes.
and Mr. Mosher.
Yes.
The motion passes 6-0 on item G.
Okay, here, we'll try that again. We're now at item H. May I have a motion, please?
I move to approve the invitation to bid for the marine vessel haul out and shipyard operations at the Gary Paxson Industrial Park as recommended by the GPIP board.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the invitation to bid for the marine vessel haul out. We're going to have a little bit of a framing of this. Before we take public comment, Sarah, you and Gary White have an introduction for this item.
Gary, you can come forward while I jibber jabber. It won't be too long. I just wanted to make a few comments. The GPIP board has been actively working on the haul out operations process for over a year, and they're now in the final stages. I'd also like to note, I think it's important for folks to realize that under Title II of Sitka General Code, the GPIP board holds greater authority than our typical advisory boards. So while assembly approval is not required for this item, the municipal administrator chose to bring it forward to the assembly in the interest of transparency. Also to inform the public about what stage the board is at and to provide an additional opportunity for public comment before moving ahead to the final steps. And those steps that are remaining are to release the invitation of bid tomorrow to the pre-qualified proposer to obtain pricing information. And then that information will be discussed at the February 20th GPIP board meeting, where they will then make a recommendation and then a final operating agreement would come forward to the assembly for approval. So tonight, staff is requesting approval of the invitation to bid in order to proceed with the next steps and complete the process. Gary?
Sure. So I'll just give you an overview of this whole process. Obviously, everyone knows we're building a haul out and it's coming along fine. And we're hoping to have the full construction done by the end of March, and our machine hopefully will be here by then. And so the second part of this is the operations piece. And as Sarah said, the GPIP board had been discussing this since 23 fall and looking at, should we go private? Should we go public? They went back and forth and decided early in 24 that we should try having a private operator come in and run it. So we developed this request for qualifications where we asked for, first we wanted to see if there was qualified people to operate this haul out because it is being built with public money. So we asked, we wanted to get people's experience in lifting vessels, washing down, running a wash down, moving moving vessels, placing vessels, dealing with the licenses, the permitting, some of the environmental stuff. We released the RFQ in July. We got responses back. We got 2 responses back in September. The staff deemed 1 qualified, 1 not qualified. And then the GPIP board reviewed that information as well and agreed that 1 group was qualified, 1 group was not qualified based off of the requirements of the RFQ. And then we started developing this, this invitation to bid. We started with a scope of services. We brought that, which is in the packet here under one of the exhibits. And then we developed the invitation to bid and a draft contract of how folks would kind of the rules of how this would be operated. And the goal is to release this. We'll send that to the qualified bidder, and then they will come back with pricing of how much per foot they would need to charge to be able to operate the haul out, how much the city and borough is going to get to cover some of their expenses. So we're almost there. Like Sarah said, within three plus weeks, we should have an idea of where their costs are. And then we can bring it to the GPIP board and then bring it to this assembly to approve. And then the community can also weigh in on whether the costs are too high, too low, or what have you. So kind of what the process is right now. So we're just asking to finalize this process, and then we'll move on and hopefully get an operator here at some point.
Thank you. We'll bring you back if there are questions from the assembly. I'm willing to bet there's public comment today. We're at that point now. Public comment on this motion.
Hello, Assembly. Good evening. My name is Michael Nurko. I've been a shipwright for over 40 years. When Sitka lost its main public boatyard to a cruise terminal some years back now, I moved to Wrangell to work in their boatyard, servicing mostly Sitkan fishing boats for close to 2 years. Before that, I had a thriving boat repair business here in Sitka for 22 years. There has always been the question of whether to have this new boatyard run by the city or to have the yard run privately. I would like to explain briefly how simply the city of Wrangell operates their boatyard. They run this yard financially in the black. They have 2 full-time employees who run their big and small boat hauling lifts. Also, the city has other people trained to run these lifts when the occasion is needed. The Harbor Master Office, with its 1 secretary, does all the billing. The haul-out scheduling is done between the office and the lift operator on a daily basis. For maintenance and repairs of all shipyard equipment, the city comes in with their trucks and mechanics. The city provides a washdown pad, but the boat has to arrange its own pressure wash with the vendor there or a private, or provide that themselves. And the yard has a small garage building for its daily needs. The daily running of the yard is basic and simple. The city of Wrangell provides support also in many ways. Talking to Wrangell's lead harbor master, Steve Miller, he very much recommends a successful Wrangell model for Sitka. I can and do very much appreciate all the work and research that everyone on the GPIP board and assembly has accomplished. A big thank you for all the information, education, and different opinions on this complicated process we're all involved in. And of course, I have my own opinion. If Kodiak-based Highmark ends up here, the result will be higher rates across the board. The money Highmark will have to pay Sitka for using our travel lift and facility will unavoidably end up with higher haul-out rates for Sitkans. A private run yard will also result in vendor job fees, which of course will be passed to the vessel owners. And there will be annual vendor fees. This is not my idea of what an open yard is. Some other city-owned and run boat yards in the Northwest that have long operated in the black are Port Townsend, Everett, and Wrangell. Why privatize our boat yard? Why not invest more in our town? There is no municipal private boatyard conflict here. If Highmark can come here and make it financially profitable, why wouldn't Sitka be able to operate its own yard with a small profit? And last but not least, with all Sitka's ingenuity, with all our resources and our very
Thank you.
talented.
We're gonna need to cut you off right there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It would be humiliating for an
We're
out-of-town
gonna need to
company
cut you off right there.
to come in. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Chris Hansen, Sitka Machine Shop. The first thing I want to make clear is that this has been a kind of a little bit of a tumultuous process for all of us to get thrown into, and I appreciate everybody's good spirits and forward-looking attitude towards this. But what we find ourselves in right now is a non-competitive bid process. We just have a single bidder. And it's going to be difficult for the city of Sitka to ultimately decide what's fair or not without having the free market help us determine what that is. So one thing I want to make sure that Sitka is understanding is that we need to figure out what that fairness is or what that point is. And if it's, as Mike just described, comparing it to city-run yards, which I think is completely legitimate, that's what it is. But if we're using some, internal cost structure that has a lot of built-in front-loaded depreciation, things like that, that'll inflate the cost. We may end up with a non-viable boatyard. And if we don't actually have people use this yard because we've already taught them all to go to Wrangell and Hoonah, we've got a big albatross. This is actually a city facility, and it should be run as an economic engine for the benefit of CBS. The second thing I want to point out is that we have the operating agreement, proposed operating agreement that's going to help guide the bid, or that's how I believe how I understand it anyway. And I still need a couple of clarifications on a couple of things in here. Twice in this scope of services is referenced an open shipyard policy, but that policy isn't available. It's not been delineated anywhere. And as mentioned in a different situation here, the devil is definitely in the details on that. Highmark is a full service shipyard service provider. They do machine work, which would make them a competitor of me. They do fabrication, hydraulics, engine installations, all manner of things, prop work, everything that competes with already established businesses that are your constituents here in Sitka. So we're bringing them in. We'll get the camel's nose in the tent. And then also in this operating agreement is the statement, contractors shall coordinate use of the shipyard by others, and others being us. If they're allowed to coordinate my work with my customers who they haul out, they can coordinate me right out of business. If they don't have the opportunity, or if I don't have the opportunity to freely engage with my customers, and this is hard coded into this operating agreement, that's not a level playing field. I'm at a distinct disadvantage at that point. So I just want to make sure that the city council considers that when you get the numbers back. Thank you.
Hello, Assembly members. I have laryngitis, so I apologize for my poor delivery. My name is Mike Littman, and I operate Precision Boat Works. I've been doing mostly commercial fishing boat repair for the past 40 years in Sitka. I want to thank the GPIP board for all the tireless work they've done and the energy they've put into this project. I appreciate that the GPIP board feels some urgency about getting our haul out operational. but the decision of how it will be managed will have major impacts for years to come. So it's critical to take any time necessary to develop the best plan possible. Selecting from a choice of one candidate isn't a promising start. I think having the city operate the haul out is the best alternative for the following reasons. More money will stay in Sitka since there will be no profits leaving town. The plan is reversible. If it becomes advantageous, we can hire a contractor at any time. The plan can also be corrected and refined. We're not bound by a contract. The management would be local and accessible to the customers. The haul out customers who have testified prefer the city management. There is little or no support for Highmark Marine among the local customers for a haul out. The last reason is it's a proven approach. Most of the marine haul outs in the region are operated by their municipality, and that is working well for them. I would like the board to slow down the selection process just long enough to consider the city of Sitka as a possible choice to operate the haul out. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Jeremy Circa, Marine Fabricator. I want to thank you guys for addressing this management for the shipyard tonight. And specifically, thank you guys for pushing the funding through over a year and a half ago. A lot of you guys were instrumental in that, getting this thing rolling first place. But most importantly, I want to speak to the operation. I think it's important to have a locally run operation, and there are many reasons for Sitka to run its own boatyard. Most importantly, it'll allow for fair and equitable use of the facility by all users. We are told that this will be an open boatyard, but like Chris mentioned, there is no open yard policy that's listed in this bid here, and that needs to be addressed. Another point I'd like to bring up is there has never been a boatyard that a municipality has developed and then put out to bid for a private operation. Even Kodiak, this Highmark yard, they ran their own yard to start out. And like Mike had just mentioned, it would be easier to look for an operator if at that point our operation didn't work for the city. Wrangell recommended that we do not put this out to bid. They looked at, the reasons, and there's plenty of reasons to keep this in-house. Another thing I'd like to note is that our boatyard here in Sitka and Kodiak's boatyard are very different. Kodiak has a 600-ton lift. They haul 35 to 40 boats a year. Sitka will have a 150-ton lift and will haul 300 to 400 boats a year. The business model is very different. The cost and everything of equipment and the just the location and types of boats we get here is very different than what Kodiak's currently doing. Another point I'd like to stress is that Highmark Marine is being looked at for shipyard services in this bid, which means hauling boats. And in no way should they be given any competitive advantage for other operations in the boatyard, which could include boat repair, welding, rental equipment, machining, painting, hydraulics, and just general retail. I think if this bid goes out to help them in those services, that's going to be detrimental to every business that's worked very hard to get what they have here in Sitka. And we've all learned to work together to get what we have. Thank you.
Other public comment? Seeing none? The assembly deliberation.
I actually have one, I have one telephonic. To call, yeah.
Yep.
Yes, hi.
Hi, David. It's Sarah calling from the assembly meeting. We are at public testimony for item H. And the motion on the floor is to approve the invitation to bid for the marine vessel haul out and shipyard operations at the Gary Paxton Industrial Park. So if you'll please state your first and last name, and then your 3 minutes will begin.
I will confess, Sarah, if it's all right, I hope I'm not screwing up too much, but I'm at the Board of Fish, and I've been working steadily on something that I have to get done. So I don't think I will really want to, but I haven't had to listen to what was said. And I do want to comment because I don't understand why there's only one bid being considered. Would it be appropriate to make the point of to just ask, because that's what I wanted to get at, but I was hoping to benefit from having heard what people said, so it might be kind of a dumb comment.
How about if I contact you tomorrow? And I can maybe answer some of your questions. There's no back and forth for public testimony.
Okay, then I think it's probably best for me to not put my oar in the water. I haven't been able to give it the bandwidth, and I apologize, but yeah, I probably better if I don't then, if that's the way it is.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Sarah.
Tor.
Yeah, some reason I've been following this. And I definitely have a lot of sympathy and maybe agreement with the folks who think maybe we should run it ourselves. However, I think it was a fair process. Other entities could have definitely put in for the request for qualifications, and they just didn't. My thought is at this point, see what they say. I mean, a lot of work has gone into this, and also I think they've been working with the company as well. So I'm willing to see what they say. I'm willing to see what they offer. And like a lot of people said, the devil's in the details. I was up talking to John yesterday, talking about making sure we have the open boat yard information is ironclad. But I also would not be shocked if it comes back and we say no, because we can, and we've done that in the past. The problem is if we did have to run it, it might not open quite so fast. Because we'd have to gear up to do it. And it's interesting we talk about Wrangell because I think there's some subsidizing in there because it's Harbor Department staff and things. But we would probably, if we have to run it, we probably have to make it part of the Harbor Department, and it's going to take some gearing up. Stan has your ability to run a lift, So I'm willing to see what they have to say. I'll just say that I'm going to look at it very critically. And of course, the cost for hauling out is going to be probably the single biggest thing I'll be looking at.
Mr. Yestad.
Yeah, this has been a long process up to this date. GPIT board has been working on it extremely hard looking at this. I want to address a couple of the concerns that I've heard here and over emails. One is about vendor fees. I've already made it pretty clear to staff and anyone who I've talked to that vendor fees will not be tolerated. not on my watch. And this is an open shipyard, and open means open. No one will be paying any sort of royalties. I will not accept it. This has been built with public dollars, and the public does not want that. We want fair competition between all of our tradesmen. So, yeah, vendor fees are a hard no for me, at least. The open shipyard policy, there is one being drafted. It is in final review. So there is one on the way for all of us, and probably the Jeep Pit Board to review here very soon. So I'm not too concerned about that. I've made my feelings pretty clear, I think. So I'm hoping to see the policy following that. You know, I think in the original process of this yard, the public made it very clear we wanted what we had at HPM. And I think that that's the direction that we are going. I had an email that was concerned about the language of coordinate, and I saw the concern because coordinate implies a couple different things. One is being scheduling, which, yeah, of course, our tradesmen don't want to be scheduled by a potential competitor. But I don't believe that is what that verbiage was actually trying to get at within the document. I think it was more like, oh, we need to set this boat on a trailer to go off somewhere, or spin the boat, or potentially set a motor on deck. I mean, whatever that may need to happen, that the contractor may need to help that tradesman. I think that is what that language was trying to catch, was coordinate and assist in repairs on the vessel. That's how I took it, at least, but I definitely understood the concern. At this point, I want to move this forward. This is strictly going out, getting the numbers. We need the numbers. We need to see it. Yes, I wish it was a little more competitive with some other bidders. That chance was given, and just didn't go that way. So here we are with one. We are looking at alternatives. You know, this isn't just the only avenue that is being looked at currently. So there is plan Bs and such. So, but this is what we have before us now. We need the numbers. We have to have the numbers. Whether we, and like Tor said, we may say no. We may see them and just like, you know what, this doesn't work. But we need to know what the answer is at this point. I think pulling back from our current respondent would be kind of working in not good faith. They've been working with us through the process so far, and I want to finish it out at least. So I want to push this through, get it forward, let them get their numbers worked up, send them back to us, and that will go before, I believe, the Jeep Pit Board and then us as well for final say. So it's not over by sending this out by any means. It will continue to go through the public process, and everyone will get a voice. I just feel like right now I don't want to kill anything until we have something to actually judge, I guess. So that's my feelings at this point.
Yeah, I agree. Basically, I understand people concerned that we're just went private. We've tried it a couple ways, and I think one of the thoughts of trying to go private is sometimes it's harder to hire people to do these things for municipalities. But in the end, we don't have to do this. We're not binding ourselves to this at all. I agree. Let's get the numbers, get the information, and I think I can say with confidence that this body is not going to approve anything that is out of the affordable range. I mean, we will do our best to make the costs as low as possible. And yeah, the process I think was a little confusing to a lot of people, and I apologize for that. I do think that it would be a breach of good faith having engaged with these folks to renege now. Let's just move the process through, and then when we get the numbers, we can make a decision. And there are other options. Operating as a city municipality is an option if the numbers don't work out. So, and there's other options too by putting it out to bid again if you want to. But in my mind, if this doesn't work out, the next biggest option is to see if the city can operate it, but I don't want to do that yet. Let's just see what these numbers are and we'll make a decision at that time. Thank you.
Mr. Saline.
I can see how we have to go forward with the process, but I'm confused on how it's IBEW workers in the Wrangle business plan and Sitka's business plan is at a $400,000 loss in a year of how it's been explained to me of why the city doesn't want to run it. And then I'm thinking people take city jobs for other reason than being paid to scale. And so if Kodiak's going to come here, it just, I'm really confused on it. It doesn't make any sense to me at all, but I can see how we got to go forward with the process. And to me, it's looking like we're going to be waiting a year to open up our shipyard.
Ms. Carlson.
I hear and agree with what's been said tonight that, we've set out a path, we're going to continue with the path. We have options if the numbers don't come in a range that we find suitable for town. A question I have for Gary about the packet, a bit of a tangent here. In Appendix B, the scope of services, it talks about CBS makes the following facilities and equipment available. The gravel vessel laydown area. I know we've had kind of a back and forth with the municipal engineer about what exactly that gravel laydown area is, because we kind of had to reduce it due to budgeting. So will it be a part of this packet through like a line or something indicated on that diagram, where the current, capital project ends and where the future of this shipyard is?
Sure. So that will be defined in greater detail when and if this moves forward. We didn't want to spend a bunch of time if this wasn't going to move forward to get the exact outline, but it's basically the north yard. The Public Works is hesitant about taking a 150-ton lift across all of our utilities in the access corridor. So right now, everything will be kind of inside that access corridor by the haul out, and then that will be defined once it's a final document.
I'm putting myself in the shoes of this respondent, and I would find it very valuable to know where that washdown pad is and where the end of the shipyard is, come March. To then be able to, in my head, start to do a feasibility study of, how many boats could I lift in a year? Where would I be able to put them to then work backwards and figure out some of those charges? I think it's imperative that we tell our applicant what they have to work with at the beginning of this term, because this is a 5-year contract and many things can happen throughout that 5 years. I think in the mode of transparency, letting them know where that yard is at the end of this capital project.
Okay, just for note, they flew here in August and I walked the property with them, and during the pre-bid meeting they were interested in figuring all this out.
Excellent, thank you.
Any other questions for Gary while he's up here?
I guess I got one on the environmental aspect of it. When it was put out, it's true that the city's going to be handling testing of the water that drains out the haul out pad, the washdown pad. Was that made to be in the bid for the private contractors or the local contractors to haul out? Like you're going to be doing environmental testing, or was it in that the borough is going to take care of making sure that what goes in the storm sewer meets DEC's?
So the borough has a vested interest in making sure that the environmental's monitored and taken care of, and they can do spot checks. There is the issue up in Seward where the haul out operator there was putting pollution in the ocean. They got sued. The operator went bankrupt, and then the city got stuck on the line. So it's the city's protecting their own asset, their own property by doing all this, but they're going to be working with the operator to make sure people aren't just pouring oil out or whatever. So it's going to be kind of a joint group, but the city is ultimately going to be responsible for environmental.
Any other questions for Gary? Thank you. I look backwards and I can't find any evidence that the city of Sitka has ever run a all out. And so we're all walking through this process at this point in time, and I was a bit surprised to hear that the government would run it cheaper than private industry, because that's not what you normally hear, right? You don't normally hear that government does it more efficiently, government does it cheaper. And so, so I think in the best interest of the stewardship of our resources, it makes sense for us to find out what private industry would charge. It makes sense for us to figure out what that looks like. And we put it out for bid, and I was equally surprised to discover that very few people were interested in it in terms of outside of Sitka, other operators. And so I think, we're going to find out what it would cost to run it in the private sector. And there are two opportunities for a yes and the same two opportunities for a no. So the first opportunity for yes or no is at the GPIP board, and then it comes to us and we have that same opportunity. So this is by no means a finished process, but I think it behooves us to make sure that we find out exactly what private industry would cost. And it costs us virtually nothing to find out from this point forward. And so I want to know what they're going to charge. And so that we as a community can decide whether or not that's something we want to do. And I agree with all the concerns that people have brought up in terms of access and definitions. And, those are things for us to bird dog and make sure get very concretely laid out, because our goal is for this to be Sitka's all out. And I want it to be that too. But I also want to find out why, if this number is so out of whack, let's say it is, and we decide that it's not, I want to understand that too, because for us to just take it on blindly, I think we would in the end be questioned as to why we didn't look at private industry to do that, because we've heard that before. Don't get in the way of private industry. Private industry can do it better. So let's find it out. And then let's make a solid decision about it as a community. And then let's move forward and decide. Also be aware, just like Mr. Littman said, it will take time if the city is going to run this thing. I think we need to all understand that this is going to delay the onset of this if this private industry thing doesn't work out. So I'm going to vote in favor of this, because I think it's very important for us to find out that number, find out the costs, find out why. Let's find out what private industry thinks about our shipyard and what it would actually cost to operate. And based upon that piece of information, I think we can all look forward and see, how can we make this work? Is it going to be subsidized by the general fund or the harbor department? That's a conversation that we all need to have. But Sitka's never run a haul out before. We haven't had a public haul out. We haven't invested public money in this. We're doing this for the first time. So I think we need to I agree with Mr. Littman. We're going to take the time, but let's make sure we have all the information before we make a decision so that we make the right decision, and we'll go forward from that. Maybe we'll change the terms of the contract. Maybe it's a 2-year deal. I don't know. Let's find out what we can get. Let's find out what it costs us. So that's why I'm going to vote in favor of it. Any further assembly deliberation? Sarah.
All right, on the motion to approve the invitation to bid for the marine vessel haul out and shipyard operations at the Gary Paxton Industrial Park, Mr. Celine?
Yes.
Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
Ms. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Pike?
Yes.
Mr. Yestad?
Yes.
And Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0 on item H.
I move to approve resolution 2025-04 on first and final reading, supporting Sitka Maritime Heritage Society's application under the FY24 Historic Preservation Fund Grant Program for certified local governments.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to support resolution 2504, supporting Sitka Maritime, am I on the right one?
Yep.
Maritime Heritage Society application under the FY24 Historic Preservation Fund Grant Program for certified local governments. Is there any public comment? No, I'm sorry. Amy, I apologize. Stomping all over this stuff. I should read the whole.
Thank you, everybody. Amy Ainsley, Planning and Community Development Director. So we just wanted to briefly describe the Certified Local Government Program as this item and the next item are both related to that. So the State Historic Preservation Office provides grants for historic preservation, and those are passed through federal funds under their historic preservation funds. And they are eligible to be applied for by certified local government. So Sitka is a certified local government. We have been one since 1992 with the establishment of our Historic Preservation Commission. And so by having our commission, having a historic preservation plan, and keeping compliant with the requirements of that program, it opens up these grant opportunities for whether it's the local government itself or for us to be able to pass through these funds to other organizations that are doing historic preservation work. So for this application, the Sitka Maritime Heritage Society is looking to seek some additional grant funds for their continued restoration of the Japonski Island Boathouse, which is a property that is leased to the Sitka Maritime Heritage Society by the city. They're requesting a total of about $83,000 under this grant. This is a 60-40 match. So the organization, that would be Sitka Maritime Heritage Society, provides the 60%, and the state through this grant program provides the other 40% match. The city does also charge an 8.5% administration fee. Again, because these funds have to be passed through us, we have to be a part of the grant reporting, and we also have to ensure grant compliance with these funds as well. So the work that the Sitka Maritime Heritage Society is looking to do under this grant, again, is just furthering the restoration work of the boathouse. Specifically, they're going to be working on some accessibility improvements, including handrails and ADA access ramps, and also continuing more of the exterior work that needs to be done on the building, including new exit doors, having a walkway between a couple of the buildings on the property, restoring more of the siding, and also putting insulation under the building. The Historic Preservation Commission did review this application and request, and they did approve or recommend approval of it unanimously at their January 8th meeting.
Thank you. We'll call you back up if we have questions. Public comment.
Hi, before I begin, just a correction on that. It's a 60-40 grant, and it's the federal government that provides 60% of it, and the Sitka Maritime Heritage would be 40%.
Can you identify yourself?
Yes. Members of Assembly, City Staff, good evening. My name is Keith Nitre. I'm the Executive Director of the Sitka Maritime Heritage Society, which for many years now, as you all know, have undertaken the restoration and rehabilitation of the Japonski Island Boathouse. And I know you all know that it's included in the Sitka Naval Operating Base and U.S. Army Coastal Defense's National Historic Landmark. The Society has requested the City and Borough apply for a pass-through grant under the Historic Preservation Fund grant for certified local governments to support continued restoration of the boathouse. This work would help improve our ADA access, help us meet the city fire codes, and also help complete the exterior rehabilitation work. We're getting very close to all that exterior work. If approved by the city, and then finally the State Historic Preservation Office, this grant will bring in as much as $50,000 to our community. And the Sitka Maritime Heritage Society would also be contributing an additional $33,333 in-kind contributions to the projects. Out of that $50,000, $4,250 thereabouts of this grant would go to the city for administering this grant. As this is my second time managing a CL grant and the 5th state historic preservation grant that I've managed, I don't foresee any difficulties in working with the city grant manager to meet all the reporting requirements of the grant. Again, as was noted, Amy noticed, the city's Historic Preservation Commission unanimously recommended the approval of this grant application and at the regular meeting, and I hope the Assembly will do so the same tonight. Thank you for your time and consideration, and may you all have fair winds and following seas wherever you go. Thank you.
Other public comment. Assembly deliberation. Mr. Christian.
I just think it's cool. We've seen this before. I mean, they came before us to get pre-approval, so it'll be cool to see what they can do with it.
Yeah, I think this is a no-brainer.
Amy? I'm sorry. Mixed up now.
All right, on the motion to approve resolution 2025-04 on first and final reading, Mr. Pike,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Mr. Celine,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher. Mr.
Yes.
Mr. Yestad,
Yes.
and Mr. Christensen.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0 on item I.
Thank you. Item J, please.
Move to approve resolution 2025-055 on first and final reading, supporting the Sitka Women's Club application under fiscal year 24 Historic Preservation Fund Grant Program for certified local governments.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to support Resolution 2505, supporting Sitka's Women's Club application under the FY24 Historic Preservation Fund Grant Program for certified local governments. Amy, thank you.
Okay, same grant program, same kind of basic information, but wanted to give a little bit more information about this specific request. So the Sitka Women's Club is applying for this grant for the Sitka Women's Club House, which is also known as Cottage by the Sea. Really exciting that this property was just added to the National Register of Historic Places in 2024. So with their work to, first kind of identify the historic nature of the building and make sure that that was recognized, documented, and included on the National Register. They have a lot of ongoing work to also kind of restore that building. So under this grant, they're looking to address some of the foundation support issues due to some rot in the building, insulating the crawl space, and also addressing some really old wiring that's in the building as well. So, they're kind of good project in terms of helping to preserve Sitka's history. The total grant request on this is for $29,000 just about. And thank you for the correction on the 60-40 match prep. It is 60% that's provided by the grant agency and 40% match provided by the pass-through applicant with the same 8.5% administrative fee that is charged by the city. And like the last item as well, the Historic Preservation Commission did also unanimously recommend this for approval.
Thank you. Is there public comment on this item? You could turn that on by chance.
Good evening. I'm Ann Polna. I'm the treasurer for the Sitka Women's Club, and I'm also the chair for the building committee. And I have my building committee crew back here. And Sarah Ellison, committee member at large. As Amy mentioned, we did just receive national recognition. We're on the National Register for the Cottage by the Sea, the little yellow house behind the library. And that project was done through a certified local government grant as well. So this will be our second grant, if awarded, through the city. And yes, there are old insulators, old cotton wiring hanging down underneath the building. We want to secure that. There's beams that are pretty wide, and because the building's so old, the flooring is kind of sinking. So we're going to put in another joist and secure that. And then, address some of the rot and where the piers meet the ground. So, and yes, we would like to do the same thing as the Maritime Heritage Society is doing and put some foam board up for insulation, save a little bit on energy costs there. Yeah, thank you. I think that's it. And we're excited that we're on the National Register.
I would just like to say that preserving the building is important for our mission and for helping people in Sitka. Our mission is to provide scholarships and grants to women and children in Sitka. We do that with rent income that we get from that building. So as long as that building is safe and healthy and desirable, we can continue doing that and maybe do it more. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
This one looks like it's on. Or is it off? So good evening. My name is Karen Lucas. a member of the Sitka Historic Preservation Commission. So I was involved in Anne's visit to our meeting. And I've also been a member of the Women's Club since 1990, and it's been an amazing organization. And we are very much full of amazing young women leadership now. So if there was any qualms about reporting or any of that, you're dealing with professionals, and I don't see any trouble whatsoever. And so hopefully this too is a no-brainer. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment? Assembly deliberation. I think it's cool. I hope there's still federal money available. Sarah.
All right, on the motion to approve resolution 2025-05 on first and final reading, Mr. Yestad,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Mr. Pike,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
and Mr. Celine.
Yes.
The motion passes 6-0 on item J.
Thank you.
All righty, we are at persons to be heard for public participation on any item on or off the agenda, not to exceed 3 minutes per individual. If there's public comment, please come up and state your name for the record.
Good afternoon, Austin Cranford. I wanted to talk about something else, but just I wanted to do a correction to the correction. When Valerie Nelson actually mentioned that there was costs associated to the community, the Assembly actually agreed there would be costs to the community specifically regarding Goddard Hot Springs. Because if I paid somebody to take me and my family over to Goddard, it would be considered a commercial operation. So that is a pass-through fee to the community, and I would be happy to find the Assembly meeting where that was mentioned by the Assembly. But the reason that I came up here is, as we all know, there was a police-involved shooting last week, not last weekend, but the weekend before. And I made a particular comment of, one, if the investigation only took 3 days, as some members of the public suggested, why the investigation hasn't been released. And then there were multiple comments that nothing had been done wrong. And I'm like, well, maybe I'm incorrect, because my understanding, at least from what I've heard, was, and I'm not defending the person that was arrested. Drugs shouldn't be on the street, period, point blank. But what I heard was a weapon was just discharged by an officer, missed the suspect that the officer was aiming at, missed the truck that the suspect was in, and then impacted a residential building where the round went into a room that somebody was occupying. So not only was it a residential building, there was somebody in it at the time. And I'm like, okay, isn't this negligent discharge of a firearm? And I was told, oh, no, it's not, by former officers and members of the public. But I was also told that, yes, it is by former officers and members of the public. So I looked, and you can find anything from NYPD to the Breonna Taylor shooting to a I-95 shooting. And then there's several more shootings throughout Minneapolis, Austin, Texas, Redmond, Washington, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Denver, Colorado, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Detroit, Michigan, so on and so forth. But basically the point is officers are not allowed to fire their weapon and then inadvertently hit something else that they weren't aiming at. And so my question is, one, if the investigation is complete, will the city release that investigation? And then two, having seen the OPM and the SOP, even having not gotten it officially from the city, the SOP and the OPM of the Sitka Police Department says that officers will not fire on a fleeing vehicle. Well, clearly an officer fired on a fleeing vehicle. So not only is there other states and other federal laws that are in place, but there's also a violation of the city's own rules. So if I can just get clarification on that, that'd be great. Thank you. Bye.
other public comment? Seeing none. We're at reports. We'll start with you. Rachel.
No, Mayor, no administrators. That puts me next in line. Nothing substantive to report. Just wanted to let the assembly and the public know that staff, so myself, the administrator, the finance department, the folks who administer our grants are keeping a close eye on that situation and preparing to mobilize quickly to take whatever action needs to be taken as that situation evolves at the federal level. And then just a reminder that I'll be attending the assembly meeting on February 11th via Zoom.
Thank you. Acting Administrator.
No report.
Acting Mayor has no report either.
I have a report, actually.
Yes, liaisons.
Well, actually, it's not a liaison. It's more a report from, I guess, I made the mistake of raising my hand to say I'd help facilitate getting the MOU for the shelter. If I raise my hand again, somebody pull it down. Anyway, it's been a process, but I think next meeting, we're gonna have it before the assembly. Things aren't gonna be, we hashed out a number of things that are going, honestly, that need to get hashed out, and I think this is not gonna be a long-term thing. I think there's also there's movement to essentially have FOSS's take over operating that building, but that's not this. This is a continuation of having the city doing it and how we're gonna do that. I'd really like to thank everybody involved because people were polite and respectful and it could have devolved very quickly and it didn't. And people were willing to be flexible and look for solutions. And the document you're gonna see in your packet next time reflects that. There's been a lot of work done by a lot of really dedicated people, both staff and the volunteers from FOSS's, which I've learned how to say that now. At the end result is, I think we're gonna have what Sitka wants, which is a working facility where the animals will be taken care of by dedicated and compassionate people. So look forward for that for next time. And I just say they've done a nice job. So.
Thank you. Any other liaisons? Clerk.
It's our upcoming meeting schedule. We have a budget meeting on Tuesday, February 4th on the enterprise funds, and then a regular meeting on February 11th.
Thank you. No executive session. We are at adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Not before you turn your phone on. Not till you turn your phone on.
What the hell are you talking about? Thank you.
We are adjourned.